Boom, what up, YouTube and Pythoneers on YouTube wanting to learn about Python, and welcome to another tutorial for Python and web scraping. And today we are going to talk about how to install MySQL, setting up MySQL for storing data to a database. So this is where the fun starts. So before we start, I'd first like to thank you all for watching and coming to my YouTube channel. So please do subscribe to the channel, like the content, share the content, and even comment if you like. And remember that you can get access to all source code for all the video tutorials at the link described here, and which you will find the link in description. That way you can support me so I can continue making these videos as well. And also it's a good idea to work with the source code to hack around the code, do some changes, practice your coding, and to get more confident as a Python developer. So and for this video there might not be any source code, but still for all the other video tutorials you'll be able to find code to play around with, so please do check it out. Okay, let's get into MySQL. So MySQL is the most popular open source relational database management system today. Somewhat unusually for an open source project with large competitors, its popularity has historically been neck to neck with the two other major closed source based systems. Those are Microsoft's SQL Server and Oracle's database management system. Its popularity is not without cause. For most applications, it's very hard to go wrong with MySQL. It is very scalable, robust, and full-featured database management system used by top websites like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, among many others. And it's also very popular for developing web applications as well. So because of its ubiquity price, which is free, it is a pretty great price, I would say, and out of box usability, it makes a fantastic database for web scraping projects, and we will use it throughout our tutorials. So a little bit about relational database. So when computer scientists talk about relational data, they're referring to data that doesn't exist in a vacuum. It has properties that relate it to other pieces of data. For example, if we have a database like in the example here, and we have two tables, we have users tables and institution table. A user A goes to school at institution B, where user A can be found in the users table in the database, and institution B can be found in the institutions table in the database. So later in the tutorial, we'll look at modeling different types of relations and how to store data in MySQL or any other relational database effectively. And installing MySQL, I'll mention some of the procedures here, and the rest you have to look up yourself. So if you're new to MySQL, installing a database might sound a little intimidating. If you're an old hat like me, you can feel free to skip this part as well. In reality, it is simple as installing just about any other kind of software. At its core, MySQL is powered by a set of data files stored on your server or local machine that contain all the information stored in your database. The MySQL software layer on top of that provides a convenient way of interacting with the data via a command line interface. So the first command line that on our slide here will dig through the data files and return a list of all users in our database whose first name is, for example, Sukhwinder. So if you're in Linux, installing MySQL is as easy as just sudo apt-get and install MySQL server. That's the power of Linux. That's why I love Linux. Unfortunately, I could not record this on Linux. My virtual box is acting up sometime, so I chose Windows instead. So when you're installing on Linux, just keep an eye on the installation process, approve the memory requirements, and enter a new password for your new router, your new root user. When prompted, I tried to combine root and user in one word. And then you have the Mac OS X and Windows. Things may be a little bit trickier. If you haven't already, you will need to create an Oracle account before downloading the package. Not necessarily you have to create an account. You can just say no thanks, download without registering. So if you're on Mac OS X, you will need to get the installation package at this link here, and then you need to download the .dmg package. And so when you start working with the DMG package, the default installation steps should suffice. And for the purpose of this tutorial, we'll assume that you have a default MySQL installation. So if downloading and running an installer seems a little tedious, you can always install the package manager homebrew, which you'll find at brew.sh. So with the homebrew installed, you can install MySQL by running brew install MySQL. So homebrew is a great open source project with very good Python package integration. So I'm not going to use Mac for this purpose. So if you are on Mac, so you should follow this. You could follow this procedure. And once MySQL is installed on Mac OS X, you can start MySQL server as follows. You cd into that folder and you start off with in the safe mode. So, and Windows is this what we are going to work with. We are following this link here. And once we get here, you go to the downloads and community GPL downloads, and you go for the MySQL community server. But here you will not find the MSI installer here. You will have to click on this page. They do rearrangements on the page all the time, and you download it from here. So once downloaded, it will guide you through the steps you'll need to take. You should be able to install MySQL using the default selections. And on the setup page, you could choose server only to avoid installing a lot of additional Microsoft software and libraries. And from there, you should be able to use the default installation setting and follow the prompts to start your MySQL server. So, and now let's get back to some basic commands. So once you install, once your MySQL server is running, you have many options for interacting with the database, and there are plenty of software tools that act as an intermediary, so you don't have to deal with the MySQL commands, or at least deal with them less often. Tools like PHP MyAdmin and MySQL Workbench can make it easy to quickly view, sort, and insert data. However, it's still important to know your way around the command line. That's why we are going to work on command line. Except for variable names, MySQL is case insensitive. For example, select in capital letter is the same as select with mixed caps. However, by convention, all MySQL keywords are in caps when you're writing a MySQL statement. Conversely, most developers prefer to name their tables and database in lowercase, although this standard is often ignored. So, when you first log on into MySQL, there are no databases to add data to. So, let's now... Not here. Maybe I need to go to desktop, and then we'll So if you're on Windows, you can start a command line. I'll make it a little bigger. I'd like to change the texts. Okay, and we enter the password. And we are in now the command line shell. So now we can create our database called scraping. And because every MySQL instance can have multiple databases, before we can start interacting with the database, we need to specify to MySQL which database we want to use. So we'll use scraping. So from this point on, at least until we close the MySQL question or switch to another database, all commands entered will be run against the new scraping database. That all seems pretty straightforward. It must be similarly easy to create a table in the database, right? So let's try to create a table to store a collection of scraped web pages. And we get an error. So unlike a database which can exist without any tables, a table in MySQL cannot exist without columns. So in order to define columns in MySQL, we must enter them in a comma delimiter list within parentheses after the create table statement. This would be a long strict statement. I'll explain in a minute what this means. Content watcher with 10,000 characters. Created is a time stamp which has default current time stamp, and we have a primary key, this ID, and close over with a semicolon. This is going to be a very, very long statement. Okay, we have an error in our SQL syntax. And we have a okay, still not. Okay, let's see if okay. So a little bit on the definition of columns, which has three parts. So the name has ID, title, and created, the variable type big int for ID, and varchar for title, and timestamp for created. And then we have some additional attributes, not null and auto increment. So at the end of the list of columns, we must define a table's key. MySQL uses keys to organize the content in the table for fast lookups. So later in the tutorials, we'll describe how to use these keys to our advantage for speedier databases. But for now, using a table's ID column as the key is generally the best way to go. So after the query executes, we can see what the structure of the table looks like at any time by using describe. And we see what kind of field we have, what type of field we have. Can it be null? Is it a key? What's the default values? And if it's additional attributes for the field. So it's still an empty table. We can insert some test data into the pages by using the following command. Insert into pages, title, content, and the values we need to insert are test page title. This is some test page content. It can be up to some characters long, and I'll just stick to. So if you select everything that's put in there, we can see that you can see that the table has 4 columns: ID, title, content, created, and we need only 2 of them, title and content, in order to insert a row. That's because the ID column is auto incremented. MySQL automatically adds 1 each time a new row is inserted, and generally can take care of itself. In addition, the timestamp column is set to contain the current time as well. But of course, we can override the defaults. And the values we need to insert is 3 for our ID, content, it can be up to 1,000 characters long, and then we can define a new date, even with some time. And we see we have now two rows, and we can, for example, omit created and put in value 2, and then we need to get rid of this, and we'll just add one more. Oops, sorry, for the funsies. Now we have some data in here. So just a note on when you're overriding the defaults, as long as the integer you provide for the ID column doesn't already exist in the database, this override will work perfectly fine. However, it is generally bad practice to do this. It's best to let MySQL handle the ID and timestamp columns unless there is a compelling reason to do it differently. So I just showed you how it can be done, but avoid it if you can. So now we have some data in the table. We can use a variety of methods to select this data here, and we are going to show some examples. So we can select all from pages where ID is equal to 2. So this statement tells MySQL select all from pages where ID equals 2 and 4. The asterisk acts as a wildcard, returning all of the rows where the clause where ID equals to 2 is true. It returns the second row in the table or an empty result if there is no row with an ID of 2. For example, the following case insensitive query returns all the rows where the title field contains test. This will give us the percentage simple acts as a wildcard in MySQL strings. So if we wanted to get all the titles that are 2, we select that as well. So, but what if we had a table with many columns and we only wanted a particular piece of data returned, not everything? So rather than selecting all, we can do a selection like this, where we just select the ID and table. Pages where so this returns just the ID and title where the content contains the phrase page content. And we could also select ID and content from pages where title like quotes. That's another way of selecting content. So delete statements have much the same syntax as select statement. And before you do delete, do select. Just to see if it exists. So for this reason, it is a good idea, especially when working on important databases that can be easily restored, to write any delete statement as a select statement first. In this case, select all from pages where ID is 4, for example, test, to make sure that only the rows you want to delete are returned, and then replace select with delete. And if we select and number 4 is now gone. So similarly with the update should be taken, similar precautions should be taken with update statements. spell it right. And he updated some content, and you saw that we can do this with lower cases as well. That is fine, but the best convention is to use uppercase. So the purpose of these tutorials, we will be working only with simple MySQL statements, doing basic selecting, inserting, and updating. So if you're interested in learning more commands and techniques with this powerful database tool, I highly recommend you buy a book, have a look at a book. It's called MySQL Cookbook. I don't remember the name of the author, but check it out on Amazon. So this is it for this tutorial, guys, and thank you again. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe, hit the like button, do share the video, or send me a comment. And remember, you can get access to source code for all the video tutorials at this link. It's a good way to practice and do some alteration to the code, see how it works, to practice your Python by downloading this exercise examples. So please do check it out, and that way you can support me, keep supporting me, and I hope to see you in the next video where we are going to talk about how to integrate MySQL with Python through scripts. So those videos will be fun as well. So I hope to see you in the next video. Okay, thanks for watching, and bye guys.